guys ever heard the term slave? Yeah? Tell me what it is. Go ahead.
It's kind of like if like someone asks you to do something, you gotta like do it, like anything they say to go through.
Okay, that's a good answer. You have to do what they tell you to do. You don't get a choice. Yeah?
A slave would be somebody that works for somebody and they have to do something, and that person tells them what they do and they have to do it right when they say, and they have to do it.
Good. You guys know a lot more than I do. Okay, put your hands down. So the book that I brought today is called Henry's Freedom Box. Okay? What do you think a freedom box is? Or what do you think he might have in it? Yeah?
I think it's freedom, but it's in a box.
Well, what is freedom? How could you put that in a box? That's a tough one, isn't it? I'll let you think about it. Yeah?
Maybe pictures.
Pictures? That's a good idea. Yeah?
It could be the place where he goes, and it's a place where he's allowed to be free, and in a box.
That's a good answer too. Well, second grade, let's find out together what it is, okay? Okay, Henry's Freedom Box. Henry Brown wasn't sure how old he was. Henry was a slave, and slaves weren't allowed to know when their birthday was. Henry and his brothers and sisters worked in the big house where the master lived. Henry's master had been good to Henry and his family, but Henry's mother knew things could change. Do you see those leaves blowing in the wind? They're torn from the trees, like slave children are torn from their families. You guys all see those leaves there that they're talking about? You see that? Okay. One morning, the master called for Henry and his mother. They climbed the wide staircase. The master lay in bed with only his head above the quilt. He was very ill. He beckoned for them to come closer. Some slaves were freed by their owners. Henry's heart beat fast. Maybe the master would set him free. But the master said, "You are a good worker, Henry. I'm giving you to my son. You must obey him and never tell a lie." Henry nodded, but he didn't say thank you, because that would have been a lie. Later that day, Henry watched a bird soar high above the trees. Free bird, happy bird, Henry thought. Henry said goodbye to his family, and he looked across the field. The leaves swirled in the wind. Henry worked at his new owner's factory. He was good at his jobs. "Do not tear the tobacco leaf," the boss yelled at the new boy. He poked the boy with a stick. If you made a mistake, you would get in trouble. Henry was lonely. One day he met Nancy, who was shopping for her mistress. They walked and they talked, and they agreed to meet again. Henry felt like singing, but slaves didn't dare sing in the streets. Instead, he hummed all the way home. Months later, Henry asked Nancy to be his wife. When both of their masters agreed, Henry and Nancy were married. Soon there was a little baby, and then another, and another. Henry knew they were very lucky. They lived together even though they had different masters, but Nancy was worried. Her master lost a great deal of money. "I'm afraid that he's going to sell the children," she said. Henry sat very still. Henry worked hard all morning. He tried to forget what Nancy said. His friend James came into the factory, and he whispered to Henry, "Your wife and children were just sold at the slave market." "No," cried Henry. Henry couldn't move, he couldn't think, and he couldn't work. "Twist that tobacco," the boss poked Henry. Henry did his job, but his heart twisted and his chest ached. At lunchtime, Henry rushed to the center of town. A large group of slaves were tied together. The owner shouted at them. Henry looked for his family. "Father, father!" Henry watched the children disappear down the road. Where was Nancy? He saw her at the same moment that she saw him, and then he whipped away his tears. Nancy, too, was gone. It's a very sad story. Henry no longer sang. He couldn't hum. He went to work, and at night he ate supper, and then he went to bed. He tried to think of all the happy times, but he could see that they were all gone. Gone away was everybody he loved. Henry knew he would never see his family again. Many weeks passed. One morning, Henry heard singing. A little bird flew out of the tree and into the open sky, and Henry thought about being free. But how? As he lifted a crate, he knew the answer. He asked James and Dr. Smith to help him. Dr. Smith was a white man who thought slavery was wrong. They met early the next day at an empty warehouse. Henry arrived with a box. What do you think he's going to do with this box? Yeah?
Put somebody in it.
That's a good idea. Who would they put in it? Do you want to think about it? Yeah?
They would probably put Henry in it.
Ooh. Is that what you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, in a moment we'll find out. What do you think? You're shaking your head no.
Well, I think maybe they might put someone else in it. I just don't really think it's gonna be him.
All right, well, let's find out. Okay, hands down. I will mail myself to a place that there are no slaves, Henry said. James stared at the box and then at Henry. What if you cough and somebody hears you when you're inside the box? I will cover my mouth, said Henry. Dr. Smith wrote on the box, to William H. Johnson, Arch Street, Pennsylvania. Henry would be delivered to friends in Philadelphia. Then he printed on the crate in very big letters, this side up, with care. So did Henry get in the box?
Mm-hmm.
Henry needed an excuse to stay home from work, or the boss would think he had run off. James pointed to Henry's sore finger, but Henry knew it wasn't bad enough to stay home. He opened up a bottle of oil of vitriol. No, cried James. Henry poured it on his hand. It made his finger hurt more. Now the boss would have to let him stay home. Dr. Smith bandaged Henry's hand, and they arranged to meet the next morning at 4 o'clock. The sun was not yet up when Henry climbed into the box. Ready, he said. James nailed down the lid. Dr. Smith and James drove to the station. The railway clerk tipped the box over and nailed a paper to the bottom. Dr. Smith begged them to be careful with the box, but they didn't listen. They just threw the box into the baggage cart. Hours passed. Henry was lifted up and thrown again, upside down. He heard waves splashing. This must be the steamboat headed to Washington, D.C., he thought. The ship rode smoothly, but Henry was still upside down. The blood rushed to his head. His face got hot, his eyes ached. He thought his head would burst, but he was afraid to move. Somebody might hear him. I'm tired of standing, said someone. So why don't we move that box and sit on it, said another. Henry held his breath. Could they be talking about his box? Henry was pushed, and the box scraped the deck. Now he was on his right side, now on his left side, and suddenly he was right side up. What do you think is in here, said the first man. Mail, I guess, said the other. I am mail, thought Henry, but not the kind they imagine. Henry was carried off the steamboat and placed into the railroad cart. This time he was head up. He fell asleep on the rattling songs of the train wheels. to a loud knocking. "Henry, are you all right in there?" "All right," he answered. The cover was pried open. Henry stretched and stood up. 4 men smiled at him. "Welcome to Philadelphia." At last Henry had a birthday, March 30th, 1849, his first day of freedom. And from that day on, he also had a middle name. Everyone called him Henry Box Brown. So is that what you guys expected to be in the box from the very beginning?
Yeah.
Really? Would we mail people nowadays?
No.
How would he find his way to DC or to Philadelphia? Let's get somebody new. Yes.
I think he could get himself there by trying to work harder and earning money, and then he could buy a car and drive there.
Yeah, that's how we do it now.
Yeah, we didn't have cars.
All right. Did you guys enjoy the story?
Yeah.